I think that would have been a great time to sell LeBron, even before he won the ring during that playoff series. I think that would be a great time to sell. But what about players that aren't in the finals or aren't in the Super Bowl? Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Wax Talk with Raw Mints. I'm Carlos.
And I'm Bruce.
And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about off-season price dips. When's the best time to buy? When's the best time to sell sports cards? When's the best time to pick up? There's certain events that sometimes happen and affect prices that we want you to be aware of if you're not already, to take advantage of those dips. But before we get into that, as always, if you could please subscribe, like, and share, review. This really helps us get the word out about the podcast. We really appreciate all of the feedback that you've been giving to us. We apologize for the poor sound quality in the last episode. I think something happened with my mic that we didn't really know what to do with. So we hopefully fixed it on this one, and it sounds a lot better to you today. But thank you for subscribing if you haven't already. Reviews really do help us out a lot. They really help us get noticed on Apple. And again, thank you for your support. We really appreciate you listening. And without further ado, let's get into it. All right, man. So this week's topic, like I said, is going to be off-season price dips. And what would you say off-season price dips means to you if you didn't know what I was talking about?
Well, I think the hardest thing about off-season price dips is really trying to focus on just that aspect. A lot of the time when you're watching, right now we got basketball, we got baseball. Baseball is just barely heating up right now, but that's the kind of stuff you want to pick up. Right now, we were just talking about picking up football because that's probably the best thing to do off season.
Right now.
But I think, the biggest thing right now is it's hard to really focus on off season pickups because if you're really truly into sports, you're kind of trying to pick up what's going on right now. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think when I started in collecting, it was during basketball season, and that's all I was picking up. I was watching games at the time and watching players and looking up names and doing research on those players at the time because that was at front of mind. I think as I gained more experience on prices and pricing and knowing when to buy, I think that I focused more time on realizing like whenever I got into baseball, it was the off season, and we are seeing, obviously, for those of you that don't know, the off season is obviously whenever the season isn't happening. So right now it's currently the football off season. It's just at the end of the baseball off season with spring training starting back up and opening day starting up. That season is about to begin, and we're about midway. We just finished the All-Star break in basketball season. So the off season is just obviously, it's just kind of what's in the name. It's whenever they're not playing. And so like I was saying, whenever I started to gain more experience in collecting and investing, I started to focus on, okay, not only how can I get the card that I'm picking up, if I'm picking up raw, if I'm picking up graded, it doesn't really matter. How can I get that at the best price possible? And in my experience with the baseball pickups as well as the football pickups that I made this year, it was during the off season. So those sports kind of see a dip in prices because their players aren't performing, or they're not having games on to maybe have a good game or to put up numbers or hit a home run. So what would you say are some things that happen during the off season that could cause a price spike? Would you say trades or like rumors?
Yeah, it could also be like injuries. That's the hard thing about, if we're saying even with football in general, is Herbert, Burrow, Tua. All their prices are still relatively high, even though Joe Burrow's got hurt. At the same time, that you would think like, oh, that's a good time to buy. But dude, his prices are still high. I mean, you can't pick up a Prism Silver rookie of him for cheap, or let alone an auto or whatever it may be. But there's more focus, like especially with football, is like if you're focusing on the newer draft class in general. We've been talking about other positions other than quarterbacks. I mean, wide receivers. I mean, there's still plenty of people that you could pick in, you could get in on right now. So if you focus on picking up, let's say, this current year football draft class, I mean, why not pick up mosaic, a base optic, a base prism rookie of all those guys, wide receivers, running backs, whatever, that are still fairly cheap. I mean, that's kind of an off-season dip in a sense, if that makes any
Mm-hmm.
sense. I mean, that's a good way to get in.
So like the players that aren't the star quarterbacks or newer draft class quarterbacks, so like wide receivers, running
it's
backs.
it's just getting to the point where you don't really have a choice. I
Mm,
mean, we're just talking specifically about football, but the quarterbacks are kind of expensive, and if they are affordable, again, go back to that tactic of just picking up a base card, whether it's raw, graded, whatever. If it's relatively affordable, just pick those up, because the season is about to begin. People are hyping up this player, that player. We have our eyes on a few different players, not just from this recent draft class, but from a couple years before. Players that are just going to continue to produce that aren't quarterbacks. To me, those are kind of the off-season dips that I'm really focusing on, because football, again, like you said, I mean, that's kind of one of the main ones right now, obviously, that we have. But it's hard not to try to get into those in-season dips as well. With baseball heating up and basketball going on. I mean, there's still players that are improving a little bit if you pay attention enough, and you can grab their cards for relatively cheap. And if it's not putting a dent in your pocket, I mean, you're still picking up rookies of guys that could pan out.
right.
Those are the ultimate off-season dips to me in general, is just picking up guys that don't have all the hype, that maybe you think could do something. And if they don't, then you're not out that much money as you are with Herbert, or if
Exactly.
whoever doesn't pan out. That's kind of my take on it.
Exactly. I agree, man. And I think that's a really good point to make about your pickups. I think we should always hammer home and we should always say to do your research on a player. So, like you said, if it's not going to hurt your wallet, if it's not going to hurt the bank, for you to pick up maybe somebody that you have a feeling is going to have a good season coming up, or is coming back from an injury that you still believe that they can come back from, and you just have to just do your research to make sure that the player is worth picking up. I know that I made a few pickups during this football offseason so far. I've been picking up a few quarterbacks that we don't really know their future yet. Dwayne Haskins being one of them, which some might be already calling a bust. Jarrett Stidham, which they just re-signed Cam to another year. So it could be another year or so until he maybe gets another shot. Daniel Jones, I feel like they're building around him. I think that that's a really good pickup. But regardless of those three players and their futures, I'm not really in it too much on picking them up, because I picked up graded base cards, a couple parallels of them at the time, which they were still pretty low. So those are just people that I'm rolling the dice on.
Yeah, it's hard not to hype up these players, because I know you and I both have picked up some pretty nice cards. I mean, silvers, hollows. I mean,
Some
I
numbered
have
cards.
a Prism Blue Cracked Ice BGS 10 Pristine Dwayne Haskins that I've just been sitting on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and that may not be that has the potential to be a monster card. If that was a Kyler Murray or someone else, I mean, that'd be a monster card still right now. But cards that you're not into for too much but have the potential to be something, I mean, that's another example. And just picking up cards, I mean, even raw, like those, you can pick up silvers, hollows of these guys right now, especially for basketball and football. Maybe they're not the most sought after at the moment, but still, I mean, it's cool to build sets, you know what I mean, of draft classes, and just have these cards, just in case. I mean, it's just kind of cool.
Yeah, and you just never know. You never know. Something could happen with Cam, and Jarrett Stidham could get that spot, and his prices could go through the roof, and that bet that I made, or I know we both have been making, could pay off. Or it could just be another year. Again, I think another key subtopic, I guess, to this episode would be patience. Having the patience in this hobby is really going to go a long way with your journey. If you're in it for not only collecting and collecting who you love, but if you're also in it to make a flip in the future or invest your money into somebody you believe in, it's patience, man. I know that basketball I would say is probably one of the quickest payoffs, would you say? As far as from going from picking up a rookie card to when they can be making an impact in the league, would you say basketball is probably one sport that there's an immediate impact?
I think that basketball in general just has, you can't even say like an overhyped impact on things, but I mean, that's like the hottest market, dude, for the most part. I mean, we've talked about, we really feel like soccer is on that rise next. Basketball is really hot right now, but baseball and football, they're not falling off. I mean, at all. It's just basketball is kind of that go to market right now. Football, we saw a little bit of that as well, and baseball is going to be the long standing the hobby. I mean, for me personally, just with from vintage to modern, I mean that's kind of the go to for me. But yeah, basketball is just the kind of the easiest thing to get in on right now. Everybody likes basketball. You bring up sneakers again too. A lot of it involves basketball. You know what I mean? So it's just the easiest sport to gravitate towards, I guess, as far as the hobby goes. It's the easiest to get in on in general.
Yeah, I think there's a culture that surrounds basketball that I think really does help with that hype. I think that
Yeah.
I think that it's probably one of the easiest sports to, like you said, to get in on as far as the
Yeah.
hobby goes. But I think it's probably one of the easiest sports to watch because
Yeah.
it's so
Well, I
fast
mean,
paced.
and again, deservedly so. I mean, basketball's a great sport, and obviously the market is it's always been hot, but yeah, it's on a whole different level right now for sure.
I mean, even with LaMelo Ball being hurt right now, obviously he's gonna bounce back from that.
But is that an off-season pickup right now? I mean,
An
his
on an
prices are
on
still.
season, yeah, an on season pickup during
Yeah,
season
well, I
pickup.
mean, and an on slash off season. Yeah, I mean, those are great points too. Is again off season pickups. If a player is hurt, is that the time to buy them?
Mm-hmm.
Someone like Lamelo Ball, though, I mean, there's still a lot of hype there, man. Prices are
Yeah,
still really high, especially with Prism coming out. It's like,
yeah,
would his prices be higher for those Prism rookies if he was still balling out? I mean, he was doing pretty well,
yes.
and I think that he'll bounce back. He's very young, even though we don't place our hype in Lamelo Ball, I guess, but I mean, it's kind of hard to say, is he really a decent buy right now? You can, still spend a lot of money when his Prism rookie comes out, or are you going to go back to, you know what I mean? I don't know, something random. I mean, finest Chris Webber PSA 9 rookie. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, it's just like the options are really endless that way, but, someone like LaMelo Ball is still going to have a lot of hype.
And again, I think that that's one thing to really make a point of and highlight is the hype around players like that with the power of social media these days and meme culture and social media culture. Kids really do gravitate towards LaMelo Ball, and it's for good reason. He makes good content. Obviously, he's been balling out. I'm not gonna already say okay, he's the next LeBron or MJ or Kobe by any
Yeah.
means. I mean he's only gonna be playing half a season essentially his first year.
Yeah, it's all to be determined. Like Zion and
Exactly.
Ja, all those guys. I mean, still great players, but I mean, are they really going to pan out and get to that GOAT status?
And like you said, that's to be determined. That's to be decided. But I can understand the hype around him. There's been hype around him long before he even got into the league. So I think that that really does affect his prices. I really think that the basketball culture does hype that. I just don't really see that with football. Definitely not with baseball. I kind of see it with soccer. I'm starting to see it a little bit with soccer with certain players, but when there is hype, I think, around soccer players, it's because they're really, really good. It's not just they
Yeah.
had. It's really, I think maybe a side note when it comes to the different sports. I think that when it comes to soccer, and we've been saying this, and I've been saying this to all of our friends, is soccer players cards. If the player is doing really well, it's because they've been doing really well for a long time. And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is you take if you could compare soccer to any other sport, I just don't think it's really as I don't think it's the same as any other sport. I think it's very different in a positive way when it comes to the viability of players because in the US because in the US most most MLB players or NBA players or football players, yeah, they've been playing their whole lives, right?
Yeah.
They've been playing since they were in Little League or Pop Warner or youth basketball leagues and stuff, not and like throughout school whenever they're growing up. But they weren't signed by any teams. You don't get signed by the LA Lakers until you're 1 year removed from college. You know, you don't get signed by an NFL team until usually you're after your third or fourth year of college. You don't get signed in baseball unless you're a really good standout kid, and sometimes during college, sometimes right out of high school, sometimes you get recruited in high school, but you're not signed to a contract when you're 8 years old, like it is in soccer.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different type of dedication for sure.
And I think that should be at the forefront of anybody trying to get into the soccer market. I think that should be one of the things that you should really think about in comparison to the other sports that you collect. Because with soccer, when you do get signed, if you get signed to a good club, at least, if you get signed by Barcelona, like Messi was, if you get signed by these huge clubs, one, that means that you showed enough talent as a young child to be worthy of being signed by one of these clubs. But also, if you're signed by one of these clubs, you're going to be getting you're on contract. So you're going to be getting the best meals, you're going to be getting the best nutrition, fitness. You're going to be in tip-top shape because pretty much you're owned by that team. But you're assigned by that club or that team, and so they're going to protect their investment from the earliest age that you get signed on. So by the time that you hit the under 17s, the under, the B league, the B club of that main club, you're in tip-top shape. And if you've made it that far, that means that for the most part, you're going to be worthy of being on the main club. So by the time you make it to your professional, if once you make it out of the youth club and into the professional club, you are pretty damn good, for the most part. Like there's pretty high odds that you're going to be playing really good soccer for some time.
Well,
And
yeah.
I
I mean,
just
you're trained your whole life for it.
and not only have you trained your whole life, because obviously the other sports you do train your whole life or you play your whole life, but you're not signed to a club that's taking care of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's a big club, if it's a good club. And so I just think that if we're going to be talking about legacy, or if we're talking about being able to sustain a long career, I just think soccer is the move for that. Obviously, baseball is pretty big too, but I just think that soccer, if you're on one of those big clubs or if you're in a big league, you've been groomed and recruited since you were young and taken care of. And I don't know. I just think that's a really, really safe bet. I mean, look at Messi, look at Ronaldo, look at Zlatan. Like Zlatan is playing so good. I know not a lot of people agree with his antics. I think it's hilarious, but these are players that are playing way past what used to be the prime age in soccer, and dude, their markets are huge still.
So yeah, I mean, but at the same time, is that another example in an not necessarily an off-season dip, but just I mean potential to get in on some great players before they continue to go up. I mean, and see the prices that Michael Jordan does and whoever else the big rookies are. It's a
Yeah,
sneaky way to get in for sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
And that's why anytime Tops, I know Tops now is going to put out a card because a player made their debut, or they scored their first goal, or they scored their first assist. I know whenever they put out those soccer cards, it's worth picking up.
Yeah.
One, because that's their very first card ever. Usually, like I don't think there's been so far a Tops Now card, correct me if I'm wrong, of a player that hasn't had a card or even sometimes a sticker yet, because they're released throughout the season before Panini or Tops products come out.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty sneaky investment to make,
Oh
and
yeah. That's a great point.
we can talk about that in a different episode, but of our investments in the Tops Now product when it comes to soccer, and the flips that we have made off of that. But I just think that, yeah, I think that if I could recommend, if we were talking about off-season dips, unfortunately, the soccer market does see some dips. It did this past year in pricing during the small window of about like a month or so, where there's no soccer being played, whether it's league play or international play. But outside of that, like soccer is the longest market too. It's the longest seasons, really, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
both with international play and club play. So take advantage of that dip when you can, but also take advantage of those Tops Now rookie cards, because they are putting that RC logo on them now. And boxes of stickers. We'll get into that on a different episode, but just get in where you can get it the cheapest after you've done your research, you know?
Yeah, there's still a lot of room to get in, especially with soccer. We're going to be talking about soccer a lot, I feel like, but there's a lot of room to get in on soccer, and these are players that are even established and then new guys. We had Prism Premier League that just dropped the new set, and it's like it's expensive to buy a box, man. Like any other wax product, but if that's the case and you just want to get your hands on some of these cards, there's still ways to, I mean, go online, research some of the set, research players, maybe pull some of the rookies from it. If you think, oh, they're playing with a good team, or they're young and have a lot of potential, I mean, you can still pick up on these sets without having to pay an arm and a leg for a wax box. But it really does come down to bringing into like the next segment of things is doing your research and your market research. For you, Carlos, I mean, if there's somebody that you're not already well about right now, somebody that you're already currently picking up, somebody you have your eye on, say you're just trying to, you wake up one day and you're like, I'm going to get into something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
A player, a sport, a team. I mean, what's the first steps you take towards the market research? What's your strategy?
That's a really great question, man. I would say there's a few resources that, now that I've been doing it for some time, well, not a whole lot of time, but I've been doing it for the past year and a half. There's a few tools that I definitely will utilize first. That's going to be the PSA population report. That's psacard.com/pop. That's going to tell you how many cards in each. It's going to tell you pretty much any cards that have ever been graded by PSA, and you can organize that by certain products, or year by year, or sport releases by player. That's usually one of the first tools that I use for any example of trying to pick up somebody new. Another resource that I use quite frequently when I'm looking into getting into somebody else, getting into another player and picking up, would be cardboardconnection.com. They don't really have, if you're looking to get into older stuff, especially non-main sports, like if you're getting into soccer, UFC, that type of stuff, they're not going to have a whole lot of information on earlier releases, especially when it comes to the soccer market and stickers. But when it comes to baseball, basketball, football, cardboardconnection.com is a great resource to figure out when products were released by year, which players appear in those products, and what you can expect from those releases as far as parallels and different types of cards and autos in those products. But the very first thing that I always do, and it varies on sport, but for basketball for example, if I were to say, you know what, today I'm going to be picking up, I'm interested in to see how I can get invested in Damian Lillard cards. The very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to literally just Google Damian Lillard rookie year and figure that out. 2012, by the way. But that's the very first thing that I'm going to research is their rookie year. And you can do this with any sport, usually other than soccer, because soccer, they're going to give you their youth rookie year, which the youth club is usually like 3 or 4 years before they made their senior debut. But with basketball, football, and baseball, that's the first thing that I do is figure out that person's rookie year. And then I'll go to, like I said, I'll go to Cardboard Connection, and I'll go to the psacard.com/pop to find their first graded cards that are out there. Usually if they're an older player, it'll straight up tell you their very first graded cards, what the year was. Obviously because they didn't make any appearances before that unless they had an XRC, which is different than a regular RC, which came out before an RC. And so that's usually how I would start my research is one, finding out when their rookie year was or when they made their debut. And again, that's also kind of different from with baseball too. Baseball is similar to soccer, right? Baseball is going to be their rookie year may not have happened yet because they haven't made their pro debut, but they're going to have their first Bowman.
Yeah, or I mean, when they're signed, when they're signed, like with baseball, you could be signed or drafted, and that's we'll get into that for sure at some point. But I mean, that's more of a true rookie card, the first actual card, which soccer kind of has in a sense with stickers. Will soccer start putting a first on their type of cards, you know what I mean? Because a lot of these guys won't actually be able to play for some amount of time. I mean, that's something for down the road. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely something else to note for sure.
What would be your process if you wanted to pick up something that you haven't picked up before?
That really depends, man. I'm collecting quite some time. A lot of people use eBay. Obviously, that is very efficient market research because things are changing drastically. I like to see more people look outside of ways, like you mentioned, some other ways to do market research. I feel like everybody goes to eBay, which we do that as well, but it's nice to have other plans before that. For me, I mean, for somebody that's really just getting into the hobby, I know I've mentioned this before, and this is a very old school way of things, but like you can go to a card shop. Most card shops will still carry Beckett catalogs. And that's kind of your price guide, your basic price guide. Some even grocery stores will carry them in their magazine section or whatever. But if you're getting into the market, like you pick up a baseball Beckett magazine, nowadays I think that it'll probably start like from 1980 to present. So you have 1980 tops, which is Rickey Henderson's rookie year. Back in the day when I was growing up, you would get Beckett's and you would start off in the vintage, it would go into like the late 40s, early 50s, whatever. I don't think that exists anymore with Beckett's unless you buy it, you subscribe to them and get like an extended catalog or whatever. I know they still make those, but just generally speaking, you can go to a card shop and pick up a Beckett magazine and it's good because you'll have like interviews and like the top 10 or top 20 cards that are hot right now. You'll learn from that market right there. You know what I mean? They'll be the top 20, like every sport, a Beckett magazine. you'll open, and before you get to the actual pricing of the cards, the price guide, you'll see, the top whatever cards, and that'll show you what's hottest in the market. And that's a good way to kind of figure that out. And then from there, you start from whatever year. Say in baseball, it starts in 1980. It's good to know, like, okay, 1980 tops, what's the key card in here? It's a Ricky Henderson rookie card. And then you get to 80 this or 81, 82, and then so on and so on. Like that's kind of the strategy that I would like to use for research, is just knowing who has rookie cards in every
Yeah.
class, every draft class. So that's another way to do your research as well, is especially if you're new to the hobby, is just grab a Beckett magazine and just read all the players, because there'll be the notable stars, some semi-stars, but you'll have the key rookies, and that'll give you an idea of, oh, maybe you didn't know whose rookie was in what class, or a Beckett is a good way to figure that out. That's one of the ways that I would recommend using, even though it's more of an old school method. I feel like some people still do. Obviously, people are subscribed to Beckett in some way because a lot of people grade with Beckett, and you can be a subscriber to Beckett and you can read this price guide even on the website if you're a subscriber or whatever the case is. But spend $10 at a card shop and pick up a magazine and just kind of do your research that way. That's more of a fun way of doing it, in my opinion.
Yeah, man. There's so much information out there. If you are able to get that Beckett price guide, that's a really fun way. It's the traditional way to do it. It's really the way the hobby used to be before the internet, before the advent of eBay and all of these other resources. But it's still a resource, man. And any resources that you can have or control at your fingertips, like, the world is out there for you to discover, and do the best research that you can before you do make a purchase, whether it's a $2 card or whether it's a $2,000 card. You want to make sure that
for sure.
you know what you're doing before, especially if you're on that $2,000 card side of things.
Yeah,
You're going to want to know
for sure, man.
that if you are making that purchase, you're making a smart effort if you're in it for investing. If you're just picking up a $2,000 card because you love that player and you love the way it looks, it's a one of one and there's nothing else like it, it's a PSA 10, it's the only one in existence, and you just love it, then just pick it up. You know what I mean? Like, if you're adding to your collection and that's one of your lifelong PC goals, then pick it up when you can.
Yeah, dude, and that's a good point. I mean, as long as you have the intent of picking up players or teams that you like, you're never going to go wrong. It's just going to be tough if you're a fan of a really good player or a really good team. Then you really have to focus on these off-season dips. But as long as your intentions are just trying to pick up the players that you like, I mean, yeah, you're never going to go wrong that way, man. Your collection is going to grow, and that's really what it's about, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll always say collect who you love, man. But to get back to the main topic at hand, I think we covered off-season price dips and what that means. But I think that we should definitely talk about when is the best time to buy and when is the best time to sell. When would you say is the best time to buy?
In the simplest forms, like we're trying to discuss, is off season. Off season is the best time to buy, but now in this day and age with the market, I mean, it's easier said than done, but yeah, the best time to buy is off season, or when the price is right, when the price fits your budget.
Right.
It just depends on what you're trying to spend. A lot of people's move right now is, if you have a really high budget, I mean, if you can spend that high dollar on those big cards, it's a complete quick turnaround.
Yeah.
But covering everything within this topic, you know what I mean, with patience and, doing your research, it really just comes down to fitting within your budget and buying something when you feel the time is right, or on the off season when you feel it's relatively low, and just holding out and seeing what happens. Because whether you decide to sell or keep, you may see some value. You may see a good return in value. That'll be up to you when you decide to sell or keep.
Exactly.
What do you think about what do you think about selling? When is the best time to sell in general?
I think the best time to sell is when that player either, I don't know, I think there's a few different factors that can play into the best time to sell. Obviously, the best time to sell, for if we made an example, the best time to sell this year would be a Tom Brady rookie card. When would you say? The lead up to the Super Bowl, after he won the Super Bowl, during the Super Bowl? Does it even matter if it's Tom Brady?
Yeah, Brady is hard to talk about because his prices continue to rise over time.
Then let's say Patrick Mahomes, for instance. Didn't end up winning the Super Bowl. I don't think he saw too significant of a crazy dip after he lost the Super Bowl. So I think the best time to sell maybe a Patrick Mahomes rookie card would be leading up to the Super Bowl, when the media has all the hype around it, has all of that, has the machine behind it leading up to the Super Bowl and the advertising. I think that would probably be the highest you're going to sell the Patrick Mahomes for the most recent time being, would be up until that Super Bowl. Same thing with basketball. Is LeBron this last year? Obviously, he's injured now, but this last year, leading up to another ring, leading up to the finals, whenever the Lakers were up 2 games, and it looks like the Heat were kind of gassed. I think that would have been a great time to sell LeBron, even before he won the ring during that playoff series. I think that would be a great time to sell. But what about players that aren't in the finals or aren't in the Super Bowl? When do you think would be the best time to sell those players? Maybe when they have a really good game? Maybe when they get traded to a major market?
I mean, you have the right mindset that, even with Patrick Mahomes right before the Super Bowl, that was the time to sell. But did people sell? Most people had faith in Mahomes, that they held those cards, and still, I mean, if they've seen a drop, it hasn't been that much of a difference. I mean, his prices are still high.
Right.
Compared to LeBron, I mean, even if LeBron just ends up saying, you know what, I'm just tired, I'm going to retire, I hope he doesn't do that. But if he were to do that, I mean, look at all the achievements he already has. I mean, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Oh, without question.
So his prices at some point, they're going to at least hold their value. It's like with vintage. It's like vintage is going to, it's going to go up and it's going to drop, but it's always held its value.
Right.
Players that are established are going to be the ones that hold their value. So it doesn't really matter. Like if you have a bunch of LeBron cards, sell some cards, you're going to make money. You can always pick up more LeBron cards, even though they may go up. I would recommend holding, if you have like 5 really good LeBron James rookie cards, I mean, and you need the money, I mean, sell all of them and hold one that has some sort of meaning to you. Hold one that you think is going to at least gain some value, like the Topps Chrome and Bowman Chrome LeBron rookies. Bowman Chrome has come up significantly, but at the same time, it's nowhere near a Topps Chrome LeBron rookie. So you can make that quick money on a Topps Chrome LeBron rookie and still have the Bowman Chrome, and it's probably going to increase and appreciate in value over time. So it really depends. I mean, the best time to sell is when you really feel it's right.
Yeah. And the hype is built up. I mean, I know we just talked about Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, LeBron. What about Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson? They did make playoff runs. I don't think it's time to sell Josh Allen, even during this playoff run, when the world was behind him, it seemed. I don't even think that was the best time to sell Josh Allen. I think the best time.
I did. I sold my best Josh Allens. So, but again, it's yeah, it's tough. I still have Josh Allen's, but I mean, I got rid of him because I mean, a lot of people have interest. They know, like, a lot of people have the hype in Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Lamar Jackson, I know we were talking about picking up Lamar Jackson. I mean, his prices have dropped significantly compared to Josh Allen PSA 10 Prism rookies. I mean, Lamar Jackson Prism PSA 10s were like 2K at one point.
Exactly.
I don't know exactly what they're at right now, but I mean, just knowing that they reached that potential at one point, I mean, there's really not a reason why they can't, I guess, especially
I don't think so
that
either.
set is not an easy 10. I mean, there's probably a fairly low pop report on PSA 10 Prism from that draft class in general.
I think, especially, I mean, even for example, I don't know what the PSA 10 Prism, even just base Lamar Jacksons are right now. But this is a recent pickup that I've made, and I'm giving out to everybody right now, is last August of 2020. So that means before the football season was happening. That means before we even knew how the football season was going to pan out. Lamar Jackson base Prism, 2018 Lamar Jackson Prism base PSA 9s were selling around $700 to $800.
Ooh.
They are selling for a little under 200 right now. Like right now, all
Yeah.
day. And you could probably get a best offer accepted. You could probably get them accepted for lower. So I don't think there's any reason that those don't at least, at minimum, double this August in price. Like that's a pretty safe assumption, I think.
Yeah.
He didn't get drastically injured. Yeah, he didn't win his second playoff game, but he won his first playoff game. I understand that there's a lot of people that don't agree with his running as a quarterback, but I personally have faith that he's going to go the Russell Wilson route and improve his arm, improve his abilities as far as the passing game goes. I'm not saying he's a bad passer. I don't think he has people he can pass to personally, but
Yeah.
I think that if they can build some development around his wide receivers or his tight ends, his options, I think that it'll kind of taper off his running, because obviously we all know, unless you're Russell Wilson, can you name another quarterback that is still a running quarterback that is winning games and is very prominent in the league?
Bringing up Russell Wilson, shout out on Russell Wilson. My wife told me next time we bring up Russell Wilson that I need to say that
He's
that
a
is her
great
favorite
guy.
quarterback. He's a great guy.
He's a great guy.
I mean, you're bringing up the only other person I see in comparison to Russell Wilson, I mean, is Kyler Murray. I mean, it's just kind of like that base. They're baseball players. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
just a different way that they run. That's kind
Kyler
of a
Murray's hurt right
comparison.
now. He's hurt though
Kyler Murray,
from running.
his prices, yeah, I mean that's a good point to make, but his prices are still relatively high right now. He's not really an off-season dip because his prices are still high on a lot of his cards. I guess we're saying Lamar Jackson, throwing that out there for everybody listening, that Lamar Jackson is a really good buy. I still think Josh Allen is a good buy. Going
Great
back
buy.
to that draft class, I mean his prices are a little bit higher, but yeah, I mean it's really hard to say, dude.
So just tying that back into doing research, the reason I found out about that price, I looked up what was the highest price. I even actually looked it up on PWCC Marketplace, which is another website that they run PWCC Vault. They usually they're a huge seller on eBay. They sell cards from any price range. They do have a really big high-end vault that they call it, that you could sell your high-end cards on. But they have, I want to say they have market eBay data. I want to say going back all the way till 2012 maybe, so about 8-9 years ago. So what I did is I searched the 2018 Panini Prism Lamar Jackson PSA 9 base card on there, and I switched the filter to show the highest sale price, and that was the highest sale price was $800 August of 2020. So again, that's another research tool that I used to figure out, okay, what are his prices now in the off season, in the dip, after he didn't go far in the playoffs, but he did make it to the playoffs. And I just think that's a safe bet. And there's a lot of other players that you can do that with, especially in football right now. I think baseball is starting to heat up, but there's still some opportunities to get in right before opening day happens and the prices go back up or people get called up. There's a couple players that built up a lot of hype during spring training over the last month or so, and they have already said, okay, they're going to be sent to the minors. They're not going to make their major league debut call up. So again, those are still some options for next season or even the current season if they do perform in the minor leagues, if there's a season. there is still opportunities to pick up in those off-season moments or those off-season price dips, I guess you could say. But do you think that kind of wraps it all up?
Yeah, and I mean, one more thing about baseball is you have more time to try to invest in guys that are going to pan out. With when Bowman Draft comes out, it's expensive now for hobby boxes. It's pretty unaffordable, to be honest. But one of the things that you could do is pick up a set of 2018 Bowman Draft, even the paper, or whatever year it may be for Bowman Draft. Pick up a set for paper or chrome and just sit on that for a while. I mean, that's, to me, that is an ultimate off-season dip regardless, because you have a lot of those players that in 3 to 5 years even will pan out, where that Bowman Chrome draft card of whoever turns out from something you got from 50 cents to $1 when it comes to buying the set, maybe $10 to $20 card or 30 to 40, you know what I mean? And then you grade it, and then that could be $100 card. That's
Mm-hmm.
another thing that I would recommend people doing if you're into baseball, because there's so much room for growth. With
Mm-hmm.
soccer, you're a little bit more limited. You don't have that kind of product coming out.
Yeah.
You may eventually, where we've talked about with soccer that there could be a first card, not just an RC on the soccer card, but there could be like the first logo on a card, and then we could
Mm-hmm.
kind of compare more soccer to baseball as far as prospecting goes.
Right.
But just another way, just another thought for people trying to get into something that has plenty of growth is really in baseball and the prospect market.
Yeah, there's a ton of potential, and that's definitely a market that I've been learning over the past year and a half that you've helped me with to better understand what to pick up and who to pick up. Not so much who to pick up, but what products to pick up in what years. That's really helps a lot. So let's get into our pickups and flips of the week. For my pickup of the week, I'm going to have to say that I picked up a lot as a group of three 2006 Panini Mega Revoluciones. Lionel Messi, that's card number 404. I picked up a 3 card lot, and I got that for $123. So that's close to like 40 some a piece. Looks like they're in pretty good shape. I don't think that they'll gem, but it's a 2000. It's a second. I don't think that they'll gem, but it's early Messi, man, and it's mega cracks pretty much. So you can't really go wrong with that. What's your pickup of the week, man?
My pickup, I've been trying to dabble a little bit more into hockey. My pickup, I got a BGS 9, 2005-06 Upper Deck MVP Sidney Crosby rookie. Relatively cheap compared to his Upper Deck Young Guns rookie and some of his other rookie cards. I want to say I paid less than 100 for it. I want to say it was around 90. I might have been too high on it, but at the same time, it's like I'm trying to learn more about hockey. It seems like Crosby is like the LeBron in a sense. So I'm just kind of trying to get into it a little bit. So that was my key pickup, I would say, of the week.
Nice, man. My flip of the week would have to be I know you're gonna hate me saying this, but I let go of 2017 Optic Jason Tatum base PSA 10 card.
Was
I
it your last
sold
one?
that. It's my last one, man.
Oh,
That I have. I think I have a couple out for grading, or I think I might have one more out for grading. But for now, yeah, this is my only PSA 10 that I had left, and I let go of that for $220. So
and you're
not
into
bad,
it,
really, for a base
and
card.
be honest, what are you into it for? I know you've had it for a
I
while.
got I picked up that card raw for $5, and it cost me $13 to get it graded. So I was in on it. I was in it for $18, and so essentially I made $200 off of it.
A flip is a flip, and you've reinvested. So I mean, you just keep moving forward. Especially if you were a diehard Tatum fan, like I do like Tatum. I wish you would have gave me a discount on that card. I probably would have bought it from you, but it's all good.
Yeah, I like Tatum too, man. But I mean, I have so many cards out for grading.
Yeah.
I don't have too much emotional attachment to it. What about you? What's your flip of the week?
Yeah, I got you. Mine was a 2019 Prism Silver RJ Barrett PSA 9. It's the only one I had. I think I picked it up raw at a show for, I don't remember. It was either a trader show, and it wasn't very much value. That was at 175 or best offer, and I think that ended at 150. So, I'm not into the card too much. I do have some other RJ Barrett, I don't have any more silvers, but just some base cards that I'll probably hold on to, because I do believe he's a good player. But again, a flip is a flip. And if I come across another silver at some point, and it's at a cheap price, I may try to pick it up. But yeah, that's definitely my flip of the week.
Nice. Yeah, so that's our pickups and flips of the week. But I think that kind of wraps up our explanation of off-season price dips and when's the best time to buy, when's the best time to sell cards. Like I said before, please be sure to subscribe, rate, review if you could. It really does help us out a lot. And we really hope that you got some information today in our episode that can help you be a better collector, maybe a better investor, better seller, better buyer. If you have any recommendations or any suggestions for a future podcast, please be sure to reach out to us on Instagram at Raw Mints. Be sure to follow us. We post weekly content, or not weekly, we post daily content to our page that we hope can be helpful and fun and informative for you all. With that being said, this is Wax Talk with Raw Mints. I'm Carlos.
And I'm Bruce.
Thank you for listening.